not starting where I had planned because I love these stories so much. I wanted to start with a story. Is when Dad first came back from the war and he was in pretty bad shape. We've learned many, many years later, well, we weren't around then, but we learned when we were older that he suffered from some pretty serious PTSD at the time, was waking up with those, nightmares, cold sweats, talking in his sleep. Very disoriented, spent a couple weeks at Great Lakes Naval Base getting evaluated and was ultimately discharged. When his discharge papers came through, it said medical on it, and Claire would have nothing of that. So she marched down to the Great Lakes Naval Academy. I guess in those days you could just walk into any office and found the doctor that had signed the discharge approval, and no one really knows what happened, but he changed the order to honorable discharge. They're both honorable, but without the medical part attached to it. And in his narrative portion, it said, the subject's sister, an attractive matron. So it was Aunt Claire who did her magic, as we all knew she had. But the second part of that story is that here he is suffering from this awful post-traumatic stress disorder, because we all know how sensitive a guy he was, and to see the things he saw and never talked about. He was invited over to your parents' house for dinner shortly after he came back, and your mom made French fries, which he loved, but I guess she burned them. And so he pretended that he loved them burned. That was his favorite way, so he wouldn't hurt her feelings, and for the next 20 years had to eat burned French fries every time he went to your house. And that's such an important part of who he was. My dad was my best friend until I was a teenager. He was fun, amazing, magical, loving, always fresh and new. The shenanigans. Luckily, I had no interest in fishing or fixing anything. When I was 12, my dad coached my flag football team for 6 humiliating weeks. We lost every game, but we still had to cheer the other team. Gilliam, good. I honestly think he liked losing more than winning, because if you won, it was complicated by the sad feelings the other team had. And if you lost, you got to participate in their joy unadulterated. Don't get me wrong, personal accomplishments were important and deserved praise, and we got a lot of praise. But leaving a room or a game or the world with more joy than you found it with was the only truly worthy aspiration. What else is there, he would say. The flip side for him was that when he did let people down, it caused him deep, sometimes permanent anguish. And this may have fueled his creative spark, but it also left him a little bit battle-scarred. Because he so desperately wanted to be involved in everything Angie and I did and thought and felt, he had a tough time making the transition to having adult children. In college, when I was pretending to be independent, and then later with young children, I sometimes didn't have the energy for it. So I withdrew just a little, which for him was really hard. When I had personal stuff to work through, I sometimes wouldn't share it. But other times when I sensed he really needed it, I would try to think of something that he could help me with. I had a really tough project at work this week, or I'm feeling kind of bad about missing parent-teacher conferences. He would light up as though the conversation till then had just been a prelude. And finally there was a meaty theme to explore and resolve, like music. And then 13 years ago, when my son Lucas's mom moved him away from us, I really needed my dad for the first time in a long time. Not in the traditional sense. I didn't share the depth of my sadness with him for a very long time, but in the sense that I just needed to know that he was there, and I felt him so powerfully. His love and strength and optimism, and it helped a lot. I never told him, but he knew. He always knew. When I reconnected with Susan 3.5 years ago after a 27-year hiatus, he welcomed her and Christina instantly and completely. And as he declined, he still had more to give, even when we didn't bring chocolate. For those of you who don't know, we moved him up to Michigan 10 months ago and saw him pretty much every day. And it was truly wonderful. I hadn't lived near him since I was 18, and I'm so happy I had that time with him to just be. We listened to a lot of Gershwin, Schubert, and Chopin. We watched Bogart and Mel Brooks. We drank good coffee by the gallon and laughed and snuggled and met the roadblocks head on like he taught me. So thank you, Georgiana, for letting me have that with such grace.
We love you so much.
Even though I know it was really hard for you to see him go for a little bit. And I am equally glad that he had the last 6 weeks with you.
Thank you. They were so valuable.
Last Tuesday, Angie made me come to New York for 2 days of Shiva. I was reluctant, I think, because of how complicated Dad's feelings were about Judaism and organized religion, but I went, and I'm so glad that I did. And I know that Dad would be beyond himself with joy to have seen us together celebrating his life, laughing, hugging, and of course eating, and at the end, weeping. The morning before I left, Angie and Norman were having a full minyan, a service with Torah, prayer, and all the rest. I was worried because I normally don't feel very connected at those times, and I really wanted to be. So I asked Norman for a book about the emotional appeal of prayer. And I read from a guy named Heschel who said to forget about the words and their meanings and just listen to the sound, the music of the prayer, and try to feel the connection to the others in the room and in the world, and to those before and after and outside of us. And I thought about Dad's old joke about the rabbi on his deathbed telling his students the final nugget of wisdom from his life. Life, he would say, life is like a river. And then the best student who got to stand closest to the bed would pass it on to the next one, and so on, all the way down until it got to the guy who never came to class and never thought about his studies. And he'd said, why is life like a river? And it goes back up, why? And then the rabbi hears the question and he says, so maybe life isn't like a river. And at the minyan, I forgot about the words, and I tried to listen to the music of the voices, and I felt intense joy and beauty and pain and wonder, and the river carried me. And I embraced my sister and her wonderful family, and the river carried me. And I wept for the first time since my dad had died, and the river held me. And I saw then that Dad was so much more Jewish than I realized, because he lived in the river. And though it's the him in me that resists the current, I saw that to resist it, you first have to feel it. So guess what, Dad? Turns out that life is like a river. Goodbye, Daddy. Thank you so much for loving me and teaching me and singing to me and believing in me and doing the same for Eliza and Cordelia and Lucas and Susan and Christina. I love you, and I will always feel you right next to me in my corner, cheering on the other guy. Because, well, what else is there?